Hi, Nicholas here, and welcome to my YouTube channel at Nicholas Bugash. This new shooting jacket was a Christmas present from my son, and with just a few days left before the new year, I find myself reflecting on questions and comments about the 444 Marlin sent in by my viewers. Some viewers wonder if the 444 is enough gun for their use, and others have strong opinions that it just does not perform on game. People use models to estimate performance when they don't have real data. Shooting water-filled jugs or wet newsprint can give us some objective information about how cartridges, specific loads, or bullets compare to one another, but they don't tell us exactly how they'll perform on game. Today, I'm going to take you along on my recent successful whitetail hunt and show you how I hunted, describe the 444 Marlin big game load that I use, and let you see its performance on medium game, the second largest whitetail I have taken in nearly 50 years of hunting. Let's get started. The 444 Marlin cartridge, developed in 1964 for hunting North American big game, has done that over the last 6 decades and has also accounted for many more head of medium game like deer, on which big game power provides tremendous knockdown. Hunters report awesome knockdown with the lighter 240 grain bullets on deer. I like using a single load for medium and big game to avoid having to re-sight my rifle. Many years ago, I found that heavy for caliber bullets did not destroy meat far from the wound track, could penetrate deeply, killed cleanly, and would leave a clear blood trail if needed for tracking. For example, the 30-30 Winchester 170 grain soft point load worked well on deer, and while the 308 Winchester and 30-06 Springfield could make longer hits easier and killed cleanly, they also destroyed considerable meat far from the wound channel on closer shots. If a shoulder was hit, the entire shoulder might be ruined. It seemed like loads having muzzle velocities above about 2,400 feet per second caused unnecessary meat damage. When I used my 444 big game load with a 300 grain Barnes Original soft point bullet on a mule deer at 90 yards, it minimized meat damage like my 170 grain 30-30 load, but made a larger wound channel and delivered greater smash. That bullet was discontinued, and as this deer season approached, I narrowed down its replacement to 2 bullet options. I wanted a replacement hand load using heavier 300 grain bullets that promised deeper penetration for big game. Many 444 hunters have reported good results with Hornady's 300 grain XTP bullet, and my XTP loads produce consistently good groups, but the warning on Hornady's box that the bullet is intended for less than 1,500 feet per second gave me pause. Maximum 444 loads don't slow to that velocity until about 130 yards, and I was concerned about potential bullet failure on closer shots on big game. Hawk's 300 grain bullet provided acceptable accuracy. Hawk's 444 bullets are available in thinner jackets for medium game and heavier jackets for big game at different weights. I was intrigued by the idea that 300 grain bullets having a thinner jacket for medium game and a heavier jacket for big game might shoot to the same point without needing to re-sight my rifle. I found the 300 grain heavy jacket load could produce acceptable accuracy, though not quite as consistently tight groups as the XTP. Hawk advertises that its bullet uses a soft, pure lead core with copper jackets that are annealed to a dead soft condition. They intend the core and jacket to stretch and flow together to keep the bullet intact even in extreme deformation or expansion, and to provide good weight retention, which is essential for deep penetration. Hawk did not post a review of their 444 Marlin rifle bullet, but I found a user review for the 405 Winchester cartridge, which is nearly the 444's ballistic twin. That user took a bull moose with one shot at 90 paces using the 300 grain 035 jacketed bullet and reported expansion to 0.96 inches and 87% weight retention. I decided to try the Hawk 300 grain with the heavier 035 big game jacket. The Hawk stock 300 grain load produced some 3-shot groups less than an inch, but my average of several groups was 2.6 inches. Still, for a rifle and cartridge combination suited to short to medium ranges for big game, this is acceptable accuracy with the bullet striking within 1.3 inches of aim at 100 yards. Sighted 2.6 inches high at 100 yards, its average 2,036 feet per second muzzle velocity keeps the bullet from dropping more than 2 inches out to 175 yards. It delivers the targeted 1,500 foot-pounds of big game smash to about 156 yards and retains 1,000 foot-pounds of energy from medium game to 260 yards. So sighted, my rifle and load were ready for the hunt. Day one was cold, in the low 30s, mostly clear, and had occasional light breezes and was dry without any snow cover. Now, I'd hunted this wooded area that lay beyond a plowed field during the previous 3 seasons, and as I walked in on the farm road in the pre-sunrise light, I saw 3 deer in the plowed field, but they were able to see me first and spooked. Heading towards the woods along a treed property line, I spotted a young 6 or 8 point buck across the field over 300 yards distance. I tried belly crawling up a small rise in the dried field to close the distance to the buck, but I couldn't get close enough, backed out, and circled to get closer, but the buck moved on before I got in range. I still hunted through the woods, bumped a single deer, and angled back. I still hunt by slowly taking a few steps, stopping, looking, glassing ahead before continuing on. I found that if small birds, chipmunks, and squirrels are moving around me, I'm going the right speed. But if the woods are silent without small animals around me, then I'm going too fast. Soon I bumped the 6th and 7th deer of the day, and their wagging tails confirm why this is called whitetail hunting and not whitetail shooting. I continued still hunting into the wind, turned crosswind, and surprised 2 more deer when dropping into a small valley. The deer were using an abandoned gate opening to cross a fence line and travel a short distance along the edge of the field before cutting back into the woods. I found a small rise in a patch of woods at the field's edge that provided a stand where I could see that area, and I cleared small branches obstructing my line of sight and found a short broken branch that could serve as a solid rest. Near sunset, 3 does stepped through the gate opening in the dimming light. One stopped, but when I set the crosshairs on it, my view was blurred. Thinking evening mist was rising there, I swung to another farther away, but I got the same fuzzy, poor view. I wondered if my old scope had failed. Then, because my view was so poor, I ended day 1. 11 does, 1 buck, no shot. The weather report for the following day predicted dropping temperatures and snow. That night, when adding scope lens covers to prepare for tomorrow's snow, I noticed that a very fine dust layer had coated both lenses of my scope. I had been able to see this in the field light, but it must have come from belly crawling on the dry field dirt that morning and caused the fuzzy view at dusk. I cleaned the lenses and decided to leave 45 minutes early the following morning to be sure to approach the deer in the dark. The following morning, the forecast snow had become a major storm, causing me to arrive too late to get in position in darkness. 3 does stood out against the 3 inches of snow cover on the open field, but they saw me moving against the snow and spooked. I still hunted through the woods and found 2 more does, but again, they offered no good shot. I still hunted the rest of the morning, bumping another doe near the corner of the small field, and decided to take lunch at the stand I'd made the evening before. No deer appeared, and after lunch, I resumed still hunting and surprised 2 does bedded down in the snow. They bolted to my left at less than 30 yards, bouncing through thick woods that provided no shot, and then when nearly out of sight, they turned around and came back towards me. I raised my Marlin and picked them up in the scope. They paused 65 yards away, slightly downhill, and seeing the head, neck, and right shoulder of one of them, I aimed where the heart should be and squeezed the trigger, firing offhand. Both deer ran off. Where they had stood was clearly identifiable by their tracks in the snow, but I found no hair, blood, or any other sign of a hit. They had turned around because a neighbor was hunting and heading my way. He joined me in search for a sign of a hit, but we found nothing but a clean miss. With 2 hours left until sunset, I checked the weather forecast and found over 10 degrees temperature drop and generally poor hunting conditions were forecast for the remaining days of the season. I decided to return to the stand and watch the fence opening. This was the view from my stand. The deer would emerge from the abandoned fence gate near the left side of the field of view and walk a short distance to the right along the edge before re-entering the tree line. Just about an hour before sunset, a doe stepped out from the abandoned gate and walked along the edge of the trees. I removed my glove, placed it on the broken branch, and rested my Marlin on the glove and followed her in my scope. She stopped where the arrow points, giving me a shot with my .444. This sketch shows the deer's vital zone with the heart-colored red and my scope's duplex reticle overlying it. Some of the new hunters among my viewers may not know how to use a duplex reticle as a rangefinder, and I'm going to take a moment to explain it. It's the same principle a surveyor uses with a transit and a stadia rod. A deer's body averages 18 inches from top to bottom at the chest. You first find the distance at which the deer's chest, that 18 inches, fills the space between the two thick vertical crosshairs. Then, when a deer fills half that space, you know it's twice as far away. When it fills a quarter of that space, it's 4 times as far away. For example, a deer fills that space when it's 50 yards away, and my scope's magnification is a 2.5 power. If a deer fills half that space, it's 100 yards away. If it fills a quarter of that space, it's 200 yards away, and that's the view I had, as depicted here. Checking the range card from my pocket, my bullet would strike 5.6 inches low at 200 yards, and strike with greater than my minimum 1,000 foot-pounds on-target energy for medium game. With the horizontal crosshair held a little over 5 inches above the heart, I was ready to squeeze off my shot. This aerial view from Google Earth Pro confirms the distance. I paced the distance along the yellow line from my stand to where the deer stood at the shot, marked by the yellow star, as 186 yards. And this Google Earth measurement shows 196 yards. I'll call the range 190 yards. Notice that my shot to the deer walking along the field's edge was not fully broadside, as along the orange line, but at an angle along the yellow line. We'll come back to this point. Here again is the sketch of the deer's vital zone. The red circle shows where my shot hit at the head of the large leg bone forward of the heart. We can use the graph of my load's trajectory and kinetic energy values to evaluate the bullet's performance. The load retained 1,500 foot-pounds of big game smash to 158 yards and struck this deer with 1,308 foot-pounds, about 30% greater than the minimum medium game on-target energy. Now, kinetic energy is not the same as killing power, or what Townsend Whalen called smash, as I have described in other videos. It's the force with which the bullet strikes the target. The bullet's construction will control how effectively that striking force is translated into game harvesting smash. Now, instead of using jugs of water or wet newsprint to evaluate the bullet's performance, we're going to look at what it actually did in the field. The images of damaged bone and tissue may be upsetting to some people, so I'll give you a few seconds to allow sensitive eyes to remove themselves. The 300 grain hawk bullet cut through the hide and a couple of inches of muscle before hitting the head of the large upper leg bone. The bullet broke off about 1 3/4 inches of the bone, destroying the joint in the process and the leg's function. The bullet continued on, cutting a 3/4 inch entry hole in the near side rib cage, passed through the chest cavity, hitting one lung, exited the far side of the rib cage, broke some bone to the far side shoulder, and passed through the remaining shoulder muscle and far side hide. The total penetration through the deer was about 15 inches. Blood sprayed from the holes on each side of the deer, marking a clear trail, and the deer was able to travel only a short distance before expiring. Now, some hunters prefer to have the bullet exit because that can leave a clearer blood trail if needed for tracking. Others state that a completely penetrating bullet wastes energy, and that ideal bullet performance is for the bullet to come to rest against the far side hide. I think ideal performance would be for the bullet to completely penetrate and then, with all its energy expended, drop to the ground on the far side. I say this because the greater blood trail is one benefit, but full penetration through the chest cavity can cause a condition called pneumothorax. When outside air can enter the chest cavity from both sides, the outside air pressure can collapse both lungs, which essentially stops breathing and hastens death. On the other hand, if the chest cavity is penetrated from only one side, enough lung function can remain for a wounded animal to travel a considerable distance. I prefer full bullet penetration because it provides a better blood trail and the potential for more rapid loss of breathing and consciousness. I've gotten questions and comments from some viewers who still have doubts about the 444's ability to cleanly take deer. Make no mistake, the 444 Marlin was developed to take the largest North American game, and does that, and offers tremendous knockdown power on medium game like deer. Some deer hunters prefer the lighter weight and more lightly constructed bullets because they tend to drop deer hit in the vital heart-lung zone on the spot and eliminate tracking. Heavier bullets like the big game constructed bullet used here still hit deer hard, but will damage less meat around the moon track. The choice of bullet performance characteristics is up to the hunter, but hunters should not doubt the 444's ability to cleanly take deer-sized game, as these results demonstrate. Although I collected my deer, I would have preferred that my shot had gone through the heart as intended. There are a few explanations for my shot hitting forward of the heart. The simplest is that I did not shoot well. My holdover for the bullet's drop at that range was correct, but the bullet struck forward. These sketches show a second explanation. Here's a broadside sketch showing the vital area with my intended heart target colored red. Now view that area from above. The arrow shows the direction of bullet travel for a broadside shot aimed at the heart, and the red circle shows where the bullet would enter the animal with that aiming point. Remember that my shot was not fully broadside, but was at an angle to the deer. The yellow arrow shows an angled bullet path with the red circle showing the same entry point on the animal, but now the bullet passes through ahead of the heart area. I think that is likely I did not adjust my aiming point for the bullet's entrance back far enough to compensate for the angle to make the bullet track through the heart. A third explanation would be wind drift, but there was no wind when I shot. But this was the longest shot on game I'd taken with my 444 in over 30 years of hunting, and I wanted to check how wind might have affected it at this range. The answer is quite a bit. Wind drift may be a consideration at longer ranges. The main factors affecting the amount of wind drift for a given wind speed are the bullet's ballistic coefficient, which can be thought of as its resistance to air drag, and the time of flight of the bullet. A wide bullet has more area for the wind to push against and will drift more than a thinner bullet of the same velocity for this reason. The longer it takes for the bullet to reach its target, the more time that the wind can push against it and cause drift. Now, I've read some articles that state the bullet's velocity is not an important factor, but instead its travel time. This statement just shows the author's lack of understanding of physics. Velocity is distance traveled divided by travel time. So the greater velocity yields shorter travel time, and vice versa. Time is a component of velocity. The shooter needs to estimate the crosswind velocity to apply the correct wind drift compensation. This table shows field indicators of wind speed, and the longer range shooter really needs to consider this when they can feel the wind on their cheek. On the right, I show the wind drift of a 30-06 load that I used for many years in western plains and mountain hunting. And it shows that even 10-mile-per-hour crosswinds do not push the bullet out of a heart-lung vital zone at 200 yards and can be largely ignored. However, the wider and slower 444 bullet would drift over 10.5 inches at 200 yards with the load that I used on this hunt. As mentioned a moment ago, it was calm when I shot, and I don't think wind caused my shot to hit forward, but this review shows that the wind is an important factor if a hunter is taking longer shots out to the 444's recommended medium game energy limit. My hunt ended successfully, and I believe this deer was the second largest I've taken in over 30 years of hunting. Let's summarize the performance of this 444 load and bullet. It penetrated hide and inches of muscle, broke 1 3/4 inches of large bone on the near side, made a 3/4 inch rib cage entrance hole, destroyed one lung, made a 3/4 inch rib cage exit hole, collapsing both lungs, chipped the far side shoulder bone, exited through more muscle and hide, showed greater than 15 inches of penetration, leaving blood trails on both sides, and the deer was unable to travel far. The performance of this bullet on a large deer at 190 yards seems consistent with the reported performance of a similar 405 Winchester load mentioned earlier on a moose at 90 yards. The 3/4 inch bullet holes in the deer compared to the .96 inch bullet recovered from the moose are consistent with less expansion at 190 yards than at 90 yards. The bullet was able to penetrate more than 15 inches at 190 yards. Given that my load's kinetic energy value suggests a 156-yard maximum big game range, the performance at 190 yards on this deer indicates that the load would be effective for big game to that 156-yard range. I'm also interested in trying the thinner .025 inch jacketed version of the bullet that would exchange some penetration for expansion and provide greater knockdown smash on medium game to see if it would shoot to the same point of impact as this thicker jacket, thereby eliminating the need to resight when switching from big to medium game hunts. I've also been getting promising results with the Swift 280 grain A-frame bullet and want to try it on future hunts. I've added this handload to the scoring matrix for the many excellent factory loads tested in my other videos. Hunters who aren't handloading can compare the performance characteristics of my load on this hunt to estimate how those loads will perform in the field. I detail why I selected these criteria and how I valued them in my two 444 Marlin factory cartridge comparison videos. This handload score is highlighted in orange. The summary graph shows that it scored for big game use at just about the median value of the 9 factory loads. All of these loads produce sufficient energy for big and medium game, but to different maximum ranges and with varying accuracy and recoil levels. My hand load did not score as highly as some of the other loads because they delivered maximum big game energy farther and they had better accuracy. Seeing how this big game load performed on this deer hunt will help you relate the on-target energy numbers and bullet construction characteristics of the other loads to the field performance that you can expect from them. Once again, my 444 Marlin filled my freezer with many fine meals of venison. Besides that, my hunting experiences over the lifetime have been among my most enjoyable and memorable experiences. It's great to be out in the natural world, away from the craziness of daily life and the civilized world. Successful hunting requires one to focus on the sights, sounds, and smells of their immediate surroundings. This can be a great source of relaxation and stress relief. Hunting also provides healthy exercise, and learning the habits of game animals, their strengths and their vulnerabilities, and pitting oneself against them puts one in touch with their primal ancestry. When you hunt, hunt responsibly. Respect the game and do all you can to ensure that you take your game in a way that minimizes suffering. Some things you can do are: Use a firearm and cartridge that are adequate for the game you are hunting. Use your firearm within the range limits of the cartridge for the game you are hunting. Use your firearm within your range limits for accurate shot placement. Check your rifle's zero each season before using it on a hunt. Practice each season before the hunt to confirm your range limits, and be willing to pass up a shot. Even when everything seems right, something can go wrong. So be confident in your situation before pressing the trigger to avoid a shot that would cause unnecessary suffering. There will be other chances. When you read through the viewer comments on my videos, you'll find many examples of hunters using their 444 Marlin rifles at the short to medium ranges for which it is designed and beyond 200 yards with some loads, and reporting game harvesting knockdown on big and medium game. The 444 Marlin cartridge and lever action rifle are American hunting classics. Contact Marlin and ask them to make new 444 rifles. And please subscribe to my YouTube channel to get my other videos. And handloads and hunting experiences are in the works.